I'm Adam Smith. I'm the congressman who represents the 9th District of the state of Washington, and I want to take a stab at explaining what's going on with the debt ceiling fight, because there's all kinds of charges and arguments going back and forth that I think obscures what's really happening. Now, the Republicans are claiming that they're unwilling to raise the debt ceiling because they want to get the deficit under control. They want to go after our debt, and they see it as a huge threat. So ostensibly, they want to cut spending. But I have terrible handwriting, so we'll see how this goes. But I want to try to show you what's going on here. First of all, where is the budget at? The most recent fiscal year that we have numbers for, we spent $6.2 trillion. And we took in, we being the federal government, $4.9 trillion. So, the Republicans supposedly would want to get those numbers closer to each other in the future. But, to begin with, this number down here, the amount of money we took in, they don't want to raise taxes at all. And it's actually a little bit worse than that, which I'll explain in just a minute. So that's not part of it. So they have to cut this. But this can also be divided, well, it can be divided in 1,000 different ways, but most simply between mandatory spending and discretionary spending. Discretionary spending, based roughly on the president's proposed budget in FY24, is like $1.7 trillion. I'll line here, separate that. Mandatory spending is 4.5. See, I told you my handwriting was bad. So that is primarily Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This, they are not going to touch and have not proposed to touch. So we're down to $1.7 trillion that we're talking about here. And again, gap's 1.3. So that's the only portion of the budget they're talking about, except that this number up here can be divided one more way. And that's between defense spending and non-defense spending. Defense spending is about 52% of that number, so somewhere in the neighborhood of $886 billion. You also have veterans in here, which is $100 billion. And the Republicans have said they will not cut defense, they will not cut veterans. In fact, they've suggested that they want to increase those two numbers. And if you take those two numbers out, what we're left with that they're going after is just about $700 billion. That is all that they're really talking about going after. And again, the deficit here is $1.3 trillion. So you're down to about a little more than half of that you're even talking about. And the crucial point here, to get where they want to be, which is they want to cut $230 billion out of the discretionary budget. So that's about 33%, maybe a little bit less than that number. What is this number? This number is best thought about as money for poor people. It's food stamps, it's housing vouchers, it's money for community health care clinics, it's money for poor school districts, it's the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act, money that goes to help schools pay for children with disabilities to get their education. It is money for poor people, and they want to cut $229 billion out of that. They want to make a 30% cut in these critically important programs for poor people all across the country. Two final points on this. They will not tell you what programs they want to cut. They have not said one single time, I want to cut food stamps, I want to cut housing, I want to cut education, I want to cut community health care clinics. They won't get specific. They just imagine that they can take $229 billion out of this number and not hurt anybody. They can't. That is why they refuse to specify exactly what it is they're going to cut. Now you can look at all of this and you can say, okay, it's not perfect, but they're going to save $229 billion. So at least this number will get a little bit closer. It'll be like $1 trillion instead of $1.3 trillion. But that's the final part. In the Ways and Means Committee right now, the Republicans are proposing tax cuts that total roughly $2 trillion over 10 years, okay? So that's about $200 billion a year, which means, and now this is getting kind of messy here, but we'll go up here, $229 billion that they want to save, and 200 that they want to give in more tax cuts, which basically means they're going to maybe save $29 billion out of a $1.3 trillion deficit. All they are doing here is they are trying to jam through their agenda to take money from the poor and give it to the rich. I know that sounds kind of cliche, the whole reverse Robin Hood thing, but that's what they're actually doing, all right? And then remember that to accomplish that rather questionable policy objective, they are willing to take the full faith and credit of the United States government hostage. They are willing to default on the debt. We are, 7, 8 days away from when we won't be able to pay our bills based on the money that's coming in, and when we would need to borrow more money to do that. And they won't let us do that. They are going to take the entire economy hostage so that they can take money from poor people and give it to rich people. That's what's going on here. It is unacceptable and should not be supported. Now, if we want to have a discussion about whether or not the federal government could go on spending this much more money than they're taking in, that's great. Let's put everything on the table and let's have that discussion. But that's not what this is about. That's not what they are doing. They are trying to jam through their narrow-minded agenda to cut relatively small critical programs for poor people so they can do tax cuts for the rich people. And they are going to crash our economy. I guess the one final thing that's worth thinking about is, and they've said this to some degree, President Biden is the president. If the economy goes down, they're going to blame him. So they're going to hold the economy hostage to accomplish nothing but taking money away from poor people to give it to rich people, and then hope that the suffering that falls on the American people as a result, they can successfully blame on President Biden. I've been around here a long time. I've seen a lot of cynical things. This is one of the worst that I have ever seen. And I just want to make sure you understand that's what this is about. Now, what should we do about this? I'll tell you what we should do about it. We should raise the damn debt ceiling like a month ago, certainly today. And then we can have this fight. Because here's the interesting thing about this discretionary budget number. October 1st, it goes away. We have to pass a bill to spend more money. They want to have this fight, they can have this fight on October 1st when the fiscal year runs out, and we have to renew this at whatever level we want to have it. They can have that fight then and not jeopardize the economy.